Hello, I'm Ezra Howard. I'm 12 years old and I go to Johnsford Middle School and I'm with the SCAD Anti-Drug Coalition.
And I'm Emily Wells. I work for the Mental Health Association of East Tennessee, and we're a nonprofit organization whose headquarters is in Knoxville, but I actually work up in the Northeast, and I'm located in Johnson City, but I do all 8 counties, so I'm in Sullivan County as well.
Okay. I have some questions for you right here. First, what is a mental illness?
So mental illness is an illness that can disrupt a person's thinking, feelings, moods, their ability to relate to others, and their ability to cope with everyday stressors. And so it's important to note that some things aren't considered mental illnesses. So like, for example, if you get really sad after someone close to you passes away, that would be just a normal emotional reaction and not considered a mental illness. So a mental illness directly impacts our overall health. And it's important for everyone to understand that just because someone has a mental illness, that doesn't mean that they're not mentally healthy. So if just like someone with a physical health condition, you could think of like asthma or diabetes, there are treatments available. And if someone who is suffering from a mental illness gets the proper help, then they can learn to manage those symptoms and they could still be mentally healthy in the long run. So sometimes that's a misconception that people have that I like to clarify.
Okay, next question. What are some common mental illnesses?
So that's actually the 2 most common mental illnesses, especially here in the United States, are depression and anxiety. So depression actually affects 1 in 5 teenagers before they turn 18. So it's actually super common. And some signs of depression could be general sadness, low energy. It could be losing interest in things you used to enjoy, like hobbies or sports or school. You could have problems focusing or concentrating. And then you could also feel worthless or like no one cares about you. And the difference between clinical depression and, just like feeling blue every now and then, which is normal, is that these signs I just talked about, they actually could last 2 weeks or longer for clinical depression.
Yes, right.
And then when you think of anxiety, think of things like feelings of panic and fear, constant worrying, problems sleeping, restlessness, or irritability. So those are kind of some common symptoms. And then it's also important to note that everybody experiences some amount of anxiety and fear, but it's short term and it's usually a reaction to things around us. So sometimes you might get anxious about schoolwork you have or about a test coming up. But that's, if you have an anxiety disorder, it's much more severe reaction, constant worry, and then it kind of feels like it's out of your control.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. What are some warning signs of suicide?
So there's lots of signs that you could look for in yourself or in your loved ones. And those can include like giving away belongings, like your prized possessions. They could be obsessed with death, make suicide threats. So one important thing I want to say for the making suicide threats is that could be someone very clearly saying that they want to die, but other times it could be more vague, like someone saying they just don't want to wake up tomorrow. And then your friend might pull away from their friends and be more isolated. You could notice like a change in personality. They could express like a feeling of guilt, shame, or rejection. And then especially for students, having a change in school performance is a big warning sign. If they used to do really well in school and all of a sudden they're struggling to...
Yeah, they're struggling.
Yeah, so that could be one to pay attention to.
Okay, let's see. Next question. What should I do if I notice any one of my friends is struggling, friends or family?
Yeah, good question. So if you're worried about a friend's mental health, the most important thing you can do is let them know that you're worried about them and then help kind of create a safe space for them to share with you their feelings. And so it's important to just listen and do what you can to make them feel safe and comfortable.
You do that, sometimes friends get offended, which I find it that way, and they don't want to express their feelings. So not to try to like persuade them to tell me, but how can I get them comfortable to tell me?
So it's actually about like being patient. So you might say like, I'm here for you when you're ready to talk, and then you put the ball in their court, so to speak. So if you're just worried about a friend, it's good just to kind of express your worry and say that you're here for them and you would listen if they want to talk, and then just give them the time to come to you. But if you're seriously concerned about a friend, so maybe you think you've noticed signs of suicide or suicidal thoughts with one of your friends, then it's a little more urgent, right? So if you're not just worried about them, you're actually really concerned, then you should speak up, and you can actually straightforward ask them, are you thinking about suicide? Because this doesn't give people the idea of suicide. Instead, it just lets them know that there is a safe place for them to talk and you are open to listening. So that's kind of important, because a lot of times people think that they can't say the word suicide if they're worried about someone, or they have to kind of beat around the bush. But it's actually better to be direct when you ask somebody that you're really worried about if they're suicidal or if they're thinking about suicide.
Okay. Thank you. That was something that, kind of touched me, because a lot of people in this world that deal with it, it's very hard for them to get their voice up and get out there.
Right, yeah. And it's hard to know for somebody who might be suicidal or having these kind of thoughts, it might be hard for them to know how to really start the conversation, right? That could be considered awkward, or they could be self-conscious, or they just could not know what to say. So if you are an open person for them to come and talk to, and you express that to them, then they might be more willing to kind of approach you if they need to.
All right. So what are some things I can say to my friend to check in on them and let them know I actually care about them?
Yeah, so we were talking about how if you're worried about your friend, like how you need to be patient and just let them know continuously that you care about them and you're there for them, and maybe they might not want to talk right then, but maybe they might come to you later on. So it is important to think about like specific language you can use when you approach your friend, because it's really easy just to say like, hey, how are you doing? And it's easy to just say, oh, I'm fine, or I'm okay, and to not really give a true answer. And so when you're really checking in on a friend, I think you could use language like, I've noticed that you haven't really seemed like yourself lately, and I'm worried about you. How have you been doing? Or do you want to talk about anything? Or you could say, I've been concerned about you lately and wanted to see how you're doing and wanted to let you know I'm here for you if you want to talk. So it's ways of saying things that sounds a little bit more sympathetic and non-judgmental and just kind of open-ended. So it's not so easy for them just to brush you off, and just say, oh, I'm fine. So that's good language to use. And then you can follow up with questions. So if they do say something to you and actually start talking to you, then you could follow up with questions like, well, when did you start feeling this way? Or how can I best help you right now? Or what an important question to ask is, have you thought about getting help? Or can I go with you to talk to somebody who can get you help? Because the most important thing is that you really help encourage them to talk to somebody who could really get them more help if they need it.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Next, who can I talk to if my friend or I need help?
So it's really important that you talk to a trusted adult for either you or your friend. If you are worried about a friend, or if you think that you might need some help, then find a trusted adult who can help you get professional help. And so when we think about trusted adults, we could think about your parents, your friends' parents, grandparents, or it could be people in your school. So it could be like a teacher or a school counselor, or people in your like hobbies or extracurricular activities. So like a sports coach or a youth pastor, just any adult in your life that you trust and that you feel like you can talk to and they can help you get some help. So that's important when it comes to talking to a friend who you're worried about. At the end of the conversation, it's always important to steer them towards getting more help, because there's professional mental health professionals who can help really get them the treatment that they need if they're struggling. And so talking to a trusted adult is the most important thing you can do.
Okay. Last but not least, what should a parent or adult do who is worried about a young person in their life at the moment or in general?
Yeah, so a parent or an adult should directly talk to that person. So just like I told you, if you're worried about a friend, The same goes for adults. So if you are a parent who might be worried about one of your children, talking directly to your child and checking in on them, letting them know that you care about them, and then really being consistent with it. That's a very important thing, like checking in on them on a regular basis. So maybe they brush you off one day, but if you continually check in on them, maybe they'll be more willing to talk to you another. And then, I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but something that's important to note is that there's a difference between just being worried about someone and then being seriously concerned that they might be suicidal or they might harm themselves in some way. So if you are a parent or a friend who is worried about the person harming themselves, then the most important thing you can do is get them help immediately. So you can do that by calling 911. So that's an easy number to remember, and they can help somebody in crisis. Or there's the National Suicide Hotline, and that's 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255. And that's a number you can call if you're worried about a loved one, a child, a friend, or for yourself. So there is help out there, and so that's important that we make sure people know that.
Okay. Well, thank you for the information you have gathered and gave to me for that.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions that maybe you thought about?
Well, what if somebody has yet to be drunk or anything like that, and then they make the decision to be suicidal? What should I do at that moment?
So if you're saying like you've talked to them and they've expressed that they want to kill themselves or they're thinking about suicide?
Yes.
So in that moment, if they say that, it's important to follow up and ask them if they know how they're going to do it and if they're seriously planning on doing it, and then call 911 or call the suicide hotline and get a trusted adult. So it's important not to leave that person alone. So if they express to you that they really are thinking about suicide and they have a plan to follow through with it, then go to have them come with you. Don't leave them alone and go straight to a trusted adult. Or if you're not near a trusted adult, then call 911. It's better that you be extremely cautious and extra careful and safe and just go ahead and call them and get help than to leave your friend alone if they're suicidal.
Well, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Well, awesome. Thank you for doing this interview. It's been good talking with you.
You too.